In landscape design, various types, heights, and textures of plants are combined with terrain design to enclose and divide spaces, creating specific landscapes or unique environmental atmospheres that evoke different psychological responses. Spatial design of plant landscapes is the core of plant landscape design. Plants with seasonal changes create vibrant landscapes when forming different plant spaces. Today, we will learn about spatial design in landscape planting. What is plant space? Definition of plant spaces. Plant space refers to an environment centered around plants, artistically arranged to meet the functional requirements of a garden. It is a beautiful plant environment, formed by artificially using plants with ornamental or practical value, artistically arranging them, and appropriately incorporating other garden elements.
Teacher, how can we create spaces?
Components of plant spaces. The elements that define the shape of garden plant spaces include the ground plane, vertical plane, and overhead plane. It is the combination and variation of these three defining elements that form diverse plant spaces. Ground plane is one of the fundamental components of landscape space. It is defined by ground cover plants of varying heights and types. This plane suggests the boundaries of space, with a strong sense of transparency and weak enclosure, creating a virtual space. For example, the boundary between a lawn and ground cover plants does not block the view, but the change in texture of the material suggests a spatial boundary, making people feel the presence of space limits. Vertical plane is created by hedges or the trunks of trees. It is the most commonly used plane in creating plant spaces. It encloses and defines the spatial area. The openness of the space formed is closely related to the plant height, branching height, and the density of leaves and branches. If the branching points are higher and the foliage is sparse, the space will be more transparent. Conversely, the space will be more enclosed. The degree of enclosure also varies with seasonal changes. Overhead plane is often formed by the canopies of trees with high branching points, creating an overhead interface when their crowns overlap in the air. The degree of enclosure depends on factors such as plant spacing, branching height, seasonal changes, and leaf density. Arbors, green corridors, and similar structures covered with climbing plants can also create the overhead plane of plant spaces. The combination of different plants creates rich plant spaces that meet various activity needs of visitors.
Teacher, this picture shows areas where plants are dense and others where they are sparse, giving different spatial feelings. How should we design this?
When using plants to create landscape spaces, you should first determine the space's requirements and characteristics. Is it open or enclosed, quiet or lively, etc.? Then select plants that meet these spatial needs. 3. Types of plant spaces. According to the degree of enclosure, spaces can generally be divided into open spaces, semi-open spaces, enclosed spaces, overhead spaces, and vertical spaces. Open space. It is defined as a space where the viewer's sight line is above the surrounding plants. It is typically created using low shrubs, ground cover plants, herbaceous flowers, and lawns. Characteristics. The sight line is above the surrounding plant landscape, offering a clear and expansive view. Feeling, relaxed and free. Plants used, low shrubs, ground covers, flowers, lawns. Below are photos showing open spaces in public areas, created with lawns and flowers. Semi-open space. It is defined as a space that is not completely open, with some sightlines partially obstructed by plants. The degree of openness varies according to the design and functional needs. Characteristics. The surroundings are not entirely open, with parts of the view being obstructed. Feeling. Ambiguous and mysterious. Plants used. Combinations of tall trees, medium shrubs, and low shrubs. Semi-open space is the most common type of space in gardens. It can be created using a combination of terrain, rocks, garden ornaments, and plant configurations. The enclosed surfaces in semi-open spaces can restrict the viewer's sightline, achieving a screening effect. Enclosed space. It is defined as a space where the viewer's sightline is blocked by surrounding plant barriers. Characteristics. The plants around the space are taller than the viewer's sightline, limiting views upward and to the sides. Feeling. Cozy and quiet, suitable for activities like reading, sitting quietly, conversing, and whispering. Plants used. Tall trees, small trees, tall shrubs. In enclosed spaces, vertically growing plants form vertical space boundaries, and tall trees cover the entire space, creating a strong sense of enclosure. This type is often used in botanical gardens, forest parks, and scenic areas, and represents the most complex plant community structure, with the most diverse plant species, and the most significant ecological benefits in modern landscape design. Overhead space. It is created by large, dense canopied trees that form a top cover while the sides remain open. Characteristics. The plant canopy blocks the viewer's upward sightline. Feeling. Warm and lively. Plants used. Tall, dense canopied trees, climbing plants. Overhead spaces provide ample activity space and shaded resting areas for people. The photo shows an overhead space formed by plane trees, providing a large activity area and shaded rest zone. Climbing plants on trellises can also create effective overhead spaces. Vertical space. It is defined as a landscaped space type enclosed by plants on the vertical plane, while the top plane remains open. Characteristics. Plants are planted on both sides, blocking the left and right sightlines, but not the front, back, and upward sightlines. Feeling. Solemn and serious, often found in memorial gardens. Plants used. Low branching, dense foliage plants, such as columnar, pillar-shaped, and long ovate trees. Vertical spaces direct the viewer's sightline upward, providing a strong sense of enclosure and isolation. This space type is commonly used in memorial gardens. Having mastered the different space types, let's now look at some space handling techniques. 4. Handling of plant spaces. The handling of plant landscape spaces generally considers 4 aspects: creating the spatial atmosphere, enriching spatial layers, achieving diversity and unity, and controlling spatial scale. Creating the spatial atmosphere. The use of plant colors and fragrances, as well as seasonal plant landscapes, is key to adjusting the atmosphere of plant spaces. By leveraging the intersection of plant seasons and spaces, different plant landscape spaces can be created to produce various scenic effects. For example, creating a space that is vibrant with flowers in spring, shady and fragrant in summer, ablaze with autumn leaves in fall, and evergreen in winter creates a pleasant environment. Enriching spatial layers. There are 3 common methods for enriching spatial layers. First, by using separated combined views through screens and framed scenes. The spaces are interconnected and permeable. Second, the use of winding forest edges can increase the spatial layers and depth of the view. Third, by employing borrowed scenery. The landscape outside the site is selectively incorporated into the field of view. For example, the Basi Pagoda is borrowed into the humble administrator's garden, blurring the spatial boundaries. Space diversity and unity. Diversity and unity are essential for creating beautiful plant landscape spaces. Techniques like repetition, balance, and contrast in plant shapes, colors, and textures help achieve this. Spatial contrast is an important method for enriching spatial relationships and creating spatial variations. Control of spatial scale. Using plants of different heights, such as flowers, trees, and shrubs, can create various effects in plant landscape spaces. 5. Organization of plant spaces. Landscape architects can create a variety of different spaces, using plants as the primary limiting factor. Plants can create distinctive spatial landscapes and form interconnected spatial sequences. Plants act like doors and walls, guiding visitors through different spaces. For example, in a street green space along a north-south road, visitors experience a sequence of spaces starting with an overhead space at the entrance, followed by semi-open spaces, open spaces, semi-open spaces, enclosed spaces, open spaces, and vertical spaces. In this sequence, plant landscape design appropriately guides and blocks sightlines, creating a dynamic spatial landscape effect. Today, we discussed the definition and composition of plant spaces, types of plant spaces, handling of plant spaces, and organization of plant spaces. For homework, analyze the types and organizational forms of plant spaces in this courtyard landscape plan. That concludes today's lesson. Thank you for listening.